Victoria touched my arm and said my name in a soft, careful voice that made time feel strange. The music, the laughter, the lights from the big house behind us all faded for a second. It was just her hand on my arm and the look in her eyes. But that was later. To understand how I got there, I have to start at the beginning. At my ex-girlfriend's engagement party. My name is Michael. I am 31 years old, and I live in a small apartment in the city. I work as an urban planner for a local firm. It is not a fancy job, but I like it. I like trying to make streets and buildings feel better for the people who use them. 10 months before that night, I packed my things from Sarah's apartment and carried them down 3 flights of stairs. 10 months since I put the last box in my car, closed the trunk, and drove away without looking in the rearview mirror. We had been together for 2 years. We tried to pretend we were fine, until we both knew we were not. 3 weeks before the party, Sarah called me. "Hey, Michael," she said. Her voice was a little too bright. "I wanted to ask if you would come to my engagement party. It would mean a lot. We are both adults. We have moved on. I want us to be okay." Every smart part of me wanted to say no, but another part wanted to prove I really was over her, so I said yes. The party looked exactly like something Sarah's family would plan. Her parents owned a big lakeside mansion, about 40 minutes outside the city. There were white tents and glowing lights and waiters carrying trays of wine in thin glasses. A string quartet played smooth music on a stone terrace that looked over the dark water. The guests wore clothes that probably cost more than my rent. People smiled, with the kind of smiles that knew they belonged in places like this. Sarah looked beautiful and happy. She stood next to her fiancé, Derek, who worked in some kind of private money job. He wore a sharp suit and a watch that looked like it could pay off my car loan 3 times. I walked over, gave Sarah a quick hug, shook Derek's hand, and told them both congratulations. I meant it. I really did. Then I did what I came there to do. I found a quiet spot away from everyone. There was a rose garden on the side of the house, with short hedges and stone paths and soft lights built into the ground. I stood near the edge where it was darker, just close enough to see the party, but far enough that nobody would notice me unless they were looking. The plan was simple. Stay long enough that I would not look rude for leaving, then slip out and go home. I checked my phone every few minutes, more from nerves than anything else. Around me, people laughed and clinked glasses and moved like they had all done this 1,000 times before. Then my phone finally rang. I grabbed it right away when I saw the name, Emma, my little sister. I had been waiting all day for her call. That morning, she was supposed to get the email that would tell her if she got into the veterinary program she had wanted for 4 years. "I got in," she said. Her voice was shaking. I felt a smile spread across my face, real and wide, the first true one all night. "Emma, that is amazing. I am so proud of you." We talked for a few minutes. She told me about the program and how scared and excited she was. I reminded her of all the nights she stayed up late studying while working 2 part-time jobs. I reminded her about last summer when she called me crying and wanted to give up, and I drove 8 hours just to sit with her on the floor of her tiny place and tell her she could do it. We were laughing about that memory when I heard a soft voice nearby. I wish someone cared about me like that. The words were quiet, almost like the person had meant to keep them inside, but I heard them. I turned and looked through the rose bushes. About 20 feet away, a woman stood alone near a small table. She held a glass of red wine in one hand and stared at the crowd like she was watching a movie about someone else's life. Her dark hair was pulled back neatly. Her dress was elegant and expensive. Her shoulders were straight, but something about the way she stood made my chest feel tight. She looked lonely. Not in a simple way, but the deep kind of lonely you feel when you are surrounded by people and still feel unseen. I knew her. Victoria, Sarah's mom. I had met her many times during the 2 years I dated Sarah, at family dinners and holiday things, but we had never really talked. Just small talk about traffic or the weather or how school was going. "Emma, I need to call you back," I said. "Is everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah. I just need to handle something. I will call you tonight. And, hey, I am serious. I am really proud of you." I hung up and stood there for a second. I did not know if I should stay out of it or walk over. Victoria had not moved. She still stared at the party, her eyes far away. Something in me decided. I walked around the rose bushes and cleared my throat so I would not startle her. She jumped anyway. For a second, I saw panic on her face, like she had been caught doing something wrong. Then she put on a polite smile that did not reach her eyes. "Michael, I thought you had already left." Quote. "I was thinking about it," I said. I nodded toward the empty space beside her. "Is it okay if I stand here for a minute?" She nodded, so I stepped next to her, leaving some space between us. "It is a beautiful party," I said. "Yes," she answered, glancing toward the terrace. "Sarah worked very hard on this." We were quiet for a moment. The music floated over the garden. Someone laughed loudly near the bar. I saw Victoria's hand shake slightly around the stem of her glass. "I heard what you said," I said softly. "Just now, about wishing someone cared about you like that. I am sorry. I was on the phone, but I heard you." Her face went pale. She set her glass down on the little table and stared at her hands. "I did not think anyone was close enough to hear," she said. "You do not need to be embarrassed." She let out a short laugh, but it sounded bitter. "That is easy to say when you are not the one falling apart at your daughter's engagement party." "What is wrong?" I asked. "Everything here looks perfect." "Exactly," she whispered. She turned and really looked at me. Her eyes were light brown with little gold specks in them. I had never noticed that before. "Everything looks perfect," she said. "The party, the house, my marriage, my life. It all looks the way it is supposed to look, but it does not feel right. Not anymore." "It does not feel real," I said. She stared at me like she was trying to decide if I actually understood. "How did you know?" she asked. "I heard you," I said, "and I heard how you talked about my sister. There was real love in your voice. I do not think you have that around you very much. Not like you want." She swallowed hard. "I gave up my career 33 years ago," she said. "I used to be an interior architect. I worked at a firm in Portland. I loved what I did. When I married Richard, everyone said it was the smart choice. He had money. He came from a good family. I could have a safe life." "So you did it," I said. "I did. And somewhere along the way, I lost myself. Now I am not sure who I am besides Richard's wife and Sarah's mother." The sounds of the party felt farther and farther away. It was like we were standing in a small bubble of honesty, while the rest of the world kept pretending. "Do you ever think about starting over?" I asked. She smiled sadly. "I am 62 years old, Michael. If I tried to change everything now, people would say I was losing my mind." "Maybe you are not breaking down," I said. "Maybe you are waking up. There is a big difference between falling apart and breaking free." She looked at me like my words hurt and helped at the same time. "I do not even know who Victoria is without all of this," she said. "I think she is still there," I said. "You did not lose her. You just buried her to make everyone else comfortable." She was quiet for a long time. The music played. Glasses clinked. Somewhere someone cheered. None of it felt as real as her silence beside me. "I should go back before people notice I am gone," she said at last. "Okay," I said. Neither of us moved. Then she reached out and touched my arm. Her hand was warm through the fabric of my jacket. "Thank you for listening," she said. "Most people see what they expect to see. You saw something else." "I am not most people," I said. For the first time that night, she gave me a real smile. It reached her eyes and made her look younger. "No," she said. "You are not." She walked back toward the bright lights and careful smiles. I watched her go, then stayed another hour so it would not look like I had vanished right after talking to her. When I finally drove home, I could not stop thinking about her words. About how a person could have everything and still feel like they had nothing. 2 days later, on Sunday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I did not know. "This is Victoria. I hope it is okay that I got your number from Sarah's phone. Would you like to meet for coffee this week? Somewhere quiet where we can talk." I stared at the message. She was my ex's mom. She was married. She was nearly 30 years older than me. Every reason in the world said this was a bad idea. My fingers moved anyway. Yes, I would like that. We met on Tuesday morning at a small bistro on the other side of town. It was the kind of place where nobody from Sarah's world would show up by accident. When Victoria walked in, I almost did not recognize her. She wore jeans and a simple gray sweater. Her hair was looser, softer. She looked lighter somehow, like she had taken off an invisible mask. "I already ordered you a coffee," I said as she sat down. "Sarah mentioned once that you like extra cream and sugar." She looked surprised. "You remembered that?" "Small details matter," I said. "They do," she answered softly. We started to talk. At first it was a little awkward, but then something opened up between us. She told me about her old job at the firm in Portland, how she loved shaping spaces so people felt something when they walked in. I told her about almost failing out of school because I cared more about pleasing my professors than about the work itself. Hours passed. Cups emptied. The bistro grew louder, then quiet again. I watched her as she spoke, her hands moving when she got excited, her eyes bright when she talked about buildings and color and light. Somewhere between her first story about a house she helped design and my story about my first real project at work, a thought came to me so clear it almost scared me. Meeting her for coffee was not just a small, strange decision. It was the start of something that was about to change everything. If that first coffee had been a one-time thing, maybe everything would have stayed simple. It was not. We stayed in that little bistro for almost 3 hours. The waitress kept refilling our cups without asking. The morning crowd came and went. At some point, the lunch crowd started coming in. We did not notice the time until Victoria looked at her watch and laughed softly. "I did not mean to talk this long," she said. "I am glad you did," I answered. She told me about her life before she became Mrs. Hartwell. She talked about a small firm in Portland where she worked as an interior architect. She told me about old buildings and how she loved walking into empty spaces and imagining how people could live and feel inside them. Her eyes lit up when she talked about light and texture, about how color in the right place could make someone feel safe or calm or awake. Then she told me about meeting Richard. "It was at a charity event," she said. "Everyone said I had caught the perfect man. He was smart and successful. His family was well known. People said I would never have to worry again." At first it seemed true, she said. Then 10 years passed. I had 2 kids, a big house, and a life that looked perfect in photos. She paused and traced a circle on the table with her finger. But when I looked at myself in the mirror, I did not recognize the woman staring back. When she was quiet, I told her some of my own story. How I almost failed out of my urban planning program because I tried too hard to impress my professors and forgot why I loved design in the first place. How breaking up with Sarah had hurt, but also forced me to ask what I really wanted from life, not what looked good on paper. "Do you regret dating Sarah?" Victoria asked. I shook my head. "No, I learned a lot from it," I said. "But I do not miss being in that relationship, if that makes sense. We were not right for each other." She thought about that. "She seems happy with Derek," she said. "She does." I agreed, and I am happy for her. "You really mean that?" Victoria said, studying me. "Yeah," I said. "Just because something ends does not mean you have to hate the person." "Richard would not understand that," she said quietly. We started meeting again the next week. At first it was once more, then twice, always somewhere away from her world. A small coffee shop near the river, a quiet diner with cracked leather booths, a park bench tucked behind a line of trees. It never felt like we planned anything big. It was just, "Are you free Tuesday morning?" Or, "I have an hour between meetings, do you want to grab a coffee?" But soon, those hours became the best parts of my week. Victoria asked about my projects. I found myself talking about street grids and public spaces and how people moved through a city. Most people's eyes glazed over when I talked about stuff like that. Not hers. She leaned forward, asked questions, and made connections to interior design and color theory that I had never thought about. "You should go back to it," I told her one morning. "To design, you still love it. That is obvious." She smiled, but it was sad. "I am 62 years old, Michael. Who would hire me?" "Who says anyone has to hire you?" I said. "You could volunteer, museums, historical groups, preservation groups. They all need people who know design." She did not answer right away. She stirred her coffee slowly and stared at the table. The next week, though, she walked into the cafe with a different look on her face. "I called the Heritage Preservation Society downtown," she said. "I offered to help with their restoration work." "And?" I asked. "They were thrilled," she said. "They want me to advise them on several projects, old houses, a theater, even a small hotel." Her excitement was like a light around her. Over the next month, I saw her change in small but clear ways. She started wearing clothes that felt more like her, and less like a role. She sent me photos of old buildings and texted, "What do you think about this facade?" or "How would you handle this corner?" We grew into a strange rhythm. We talked about history, paint colors, zoning laws, and life. The more she found herself again, the more pulled I felt toward her. In August, she asked if I would help her prepare a presentation for a preservation conference. "I am nervous," she admitted. "It has been a long time since I spoke in front of people who care about design instead of dinner menus." "I will help," I said. "We will make it good." We spent 3 full days at her house while Richard was traveling for business. We sat at her dining table surrounded by photos, books, and open laptops. We argued in a friendly way about which projects to include. We talked about how to explain adaptive reuse in a way normal people could understand. She had this habit of biting her lower lip when she was thinking hard. The more time we spent together, the more I noticed it. One afternoon, she looked up and caught me watching her. "Stop staring at me," she said, but there was a small smile on her face. "I am not staring," I said. "I am observing. I am a designer." "It is research." She laughed, really laughed, and the sound went straight to my chest. "Is that what you are calling it?" Quote. Later that same day, we took a break on the couch in her living room. She sat at one end, I sat at the other, our legs almost touching. "Why are you doing this?" she asked suddenly. "Doing what?" I asked. "Spending so much time with me," she said. "You are 31. You must have friends your own age. People to go out with. People who do not come with this many complications." I thought about it and told her the truth. "I do have other people," I said, "but none of them are you." Her eyes softened, but her jaw tightened. "This is dangerous," she said quietly. "You know that, right?" "I know," I said. 2 weeks later, the conference took place in a beautiful old building downtown. The halls were full of architects, students, historians, and donors. Victoria wore a simple black dress and a thin silver necklace. She looked nervous at first, but when she started talking about preservation, all the nerves burned away. She glowed. I stood in the back and watched her move from project board to project board, answering questions, pointing to details, explaining old materials like they were beloved friends. Seeing her that way made something in me ache in a good way. Around 7, I saw Richard walk in. Tall, gray hair, perfect suit. He walked through the room like he was checking boxes. He shook a few hands, glanced at the boards, then checked his phone. When Victoria went over to him, I watched her smile dim just a little. He kissed her cheek without really looking at her and left, after barely half an hour. Later, I found her sitting on a bench near the restrooms. Her eyes were red. "Hey," I said, sitting beside her. "What is wrong?" "The conference was amazing. People loved your work." "Richard did not even ask me which project was my favorite," she said. Her voice shook. "He came because it looks good for his business connections, not because he cares about me or what matters to me." She started to cry harder. I did not have any smart words, so I did the only thing that felt right. I put my arm around her shoulders. She leaned into me like she had been holding herself up for too long. "I have known for years that our marriage is basically a business deal," she said. "Seeing it so clearly tonight hurt more than I thought it would. I do not think he has ever really loved me. I was just someone who looked good next to him." We stayed like that while staff started to take down signs and stack chairs, her head on my shoulder, my arm around her. It felt wrong that she was so alone in that moment. It felt wrong that I was the only one holding her. It also felt completely right. "Victoria," I said quietly. She lifted her head and looked at me with wet eyes. My heart beat so hard I could hear it. "I am falling in love with you," I said. She sucked in a breath. You cannot say that, she whispered. I already did, I said, and it is true. Her hand came up and touched my face, fingers soft against my cheek. This is impossible, she said. You know that. I am married. You dated my daughter. I am so much older than you. People would never understand this. Maybe they would not, I said, but that does not change what I feel. She stared at me for a long time. I could see her fighting with herself. Then, slowly, she leaned forward and pressed her lips to mine. The kiss was soft at first, careful and slow. It felt like something that had been waiting a long time. When we pulled apart, there were tears on her face again. I am falling in love with you too, she whispered. And I have no idea what to do about it. We do not have to solve everything tonight, I said. We just have to be honest about what we feel. She nodded and kissed me again. This time it was deeper, more certain. In that quiet corner of the old building, in the middle of her broken marriage and my messy past, something real started. The weeks that followed felt like living two different lives. When I was with Victoria, everything made sense. We met at small restaurants outside the city, walked through parks in neighborhoods where no one knew us. We talked about buildings and books and music, and all the years she felt invisible in her own home. We joked, we argued, we held hands in quiet corners where nobody was watching. When I was not with her, guilt sat heavy on my chest. I thought about Sarah. I thought about Richard. I thought about the way people would look at us if they knew. We started using a messaging app that made our conversations disappear after we read them. It felt sneaky. It also felt like the only way to protect what we had while we tried to figure things out. Then, one Thursday morning in early September, I was at a coffee shop near my apartment, working on a project when Sarah walked in. My stomach dropped. Mind if I sit? She asked, already pulling out the chair across from me. Sure, I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. We talked about safe things for a few minutes. Work, the weather, her wedding planning. Then she leaned forward. Can I ask you something weird? She said. Okay, I said, even though I wanted to say no. Have you talked to my mom lately? I felt my heart start to pound, but I kept my face neutral. Not really, I said. Why? She is acting different, Sarah said. She is never home. She is always at that preservation society, or meeting people about some design group she wants to start. She is dressing younger, and she smiles at her phone all the time. She forgot a family dinner last week because she was meeting someone. She stirred her tea and shook her head. I think she might be having an affair, she whispered. I know that sounds crazy, but she is acting like someone who is in love. It is definitely not with my dad. They barely talk. The coffee in my cup tasted sour now. I wanted to tell her her mom deserved happiness after 30 years of pretending. I could not say anything without breaking everything open. Maybe she is just happy doing work she likes again, I said slowly. Maybe it is that simple. Maybe, Sarah said, but she did not sound sure. I just hope she is being smart. Our family has a reputation. Especially with my dad's business. If she is doing something that could embarrass us. She did not finish, but she did not have to. After she left, I sat in that coffee shop for another hour, staring at my phone. Finally, I texted Victoria. We need to talk soon. She met me in a park that afternoon. We sat on a bench far from the main path. Sarah suspects something, I said. She thinks you are having an affair. Victoria went pale. Her hands started to shake. What did you tell her? She asked. Nothing, I said. But she is watching now. We cannot keep pretending this is just some secret bubble. We need to figure out what we are doing. I know, she said, but I am scared. I am scared of what people will say. I am scared of losing Sarah. I am scared of what Richard will do when he finds out. I took her hands. I understand, I said. But I also cannot keep living like this. I love you. I want a real relationship with you. Not just hidden meetings and messages that vanish. Tears filled her eyes. I want that too, she said. But I need time to figure out how to do this. I have to talk to Richard. I have to handle the separation. There is money, property, his business. I have to be smart. How much time? I asked. I don't know, she said. A few weeks? A month? I just know I cannot blow up everything in one night. Frustration burned in my chest. I tried to swallow it, but it came out anyway. So we just keep sneaking around? I asked. Well, you decide if I am worth the risk. That is not fair, she said, crying now. Nothing about this is fair. I know, I said, but I have already lost work because people think I am involved with someone I should not be. People at my firm talk. I hear the jokes. I put up with it because I love you, and I thought you loved me too. I do love you, she said. Then why does it feel like you are choosing everyone else over me? I asked. She could not answer. She just stood there crying as people walked past us, full of their own simple, normal problems. Maybe we should stop seeing each other for a while, she whispered. Just until I figure things out with Richard. It might be easier if we are not making everything more complicated. The words hit me like a punch. You want to pause this? I asked. Not end it, she said quickly. Just pause. Please try to understand. I stood up. The hurt was too big to hold quietly. Take your time, I said. Do what you need to do, but do not expect me to just wait forever while you decide if I am worth it. Michael, she said, reaching out. Please. I stepped back. Nothing about this has been fair, I said. Not for you, not for me. I just need to breathe. Then I turned and walked away from her, away from the bench in the park and the life we had started to build in secret. I did not look back, even though every part of me wanted to. For almost a month, I did not hear from Victoria. Every morning I checked my phone before I even got out of bed. Every night I plugged it in and told myself I would stop waiting. The next morning, I checked it again anyway. The silence hurt more than I expected. It was like a bruise I kept pressing, just to see if it still hurt. I buried myself in work. I took on extra projects at the firm. I stayed late at my drafting table drawing plans until my eyes burned. My apartment turned into a mess of coffee cups, cold pizza boxes, and rolled-up drawings. It did not stop me from thinking about her. Nothing did. One evening, Emma called. You sound terrible, she said right away. What is going on with that woman you told me about last time? It is over, I said, then paused. Or maybe it is not. I do not know. Do you love her? Emma asked. Yeah, I said, I do. Does she love you? She asked. She says she does, I said, but she is scared. She is married. She is older. There are a lot of people involved. It is complicated. Emma was quiet for a second. You cannot make someone choose you, she said. You can only decide how long you want to wait while they figure things out. Just make sure you are not putting your whole life on hold for someone who might never be ready. She is worth waiting for, I said. Maybe she is, Emma said. But you also deserve someone who picks you without needing weeks to think about it. After we hung up, I sat in the dark with my phone in my hand. I wanted to text Victoria. I wanted to ask if she was okay. But the part of me that still felt angry and hurt was stronger than the part that missed her. Then, on a cold morning in early October, my phone rang with a number I did not know. This is Jennifer Ross from the Community Action Coalition, a woman said. Victoria Hartwell gave me your number. She said you might be interested in helping design a community center we are planning on the east side. For a moment, I could not speak. Victoria gave you my number? I asked. Yes, Jennifer said. She spoke very highly of you. She and her design collective are our largest donor for this project. Even while we were not speaking, she was still thinking of me, still trying to help me. I would be very interested, I said. We set a meeting for the next week. The coalition wanted to build a community center in a neighborhood that had almost no resources. No safe place for kids after school. No quiet space for adults to study or meet. The budget was tight, but the need was real. It was exactly the kind of project I had dreamed of doing when I started school. Over the next 2 weeks, I worked on design ideas. I walked through the neighborhood and watched how people used the streets. I sat on cracked benches and watched where kids played, where the old men played cards, where mothers pushed strollers. Every time I made a design choice, I imagined explaining it to Victoria. I heard her voice in my head, asking things like, how does this corner feel? And what does the light do here? It made the work better and more painful at the same time. The first big presentation was in a conference room at the Coalition building. Jennifer and 3 other members sat around a long table. I set up drawings and diagrams on foam boards. I started walking them through the plan. Halfway through, the door opened. Victoria walked in. She froze when she saw me, just for a second, then smoothed her face like she always did in public settings. "Perfect timing," Jennifer said. "Victoria, you already know Michael. You recommended him. We were just going over his first concepts." "We have met," Victoria said quietly. She sat down at the far end of the table, as far from me as she could. My heart was pounding, but I kept talking. My voice felt stiff and too formal, like I was giving a presentation in school again. When I finished, Jennifer turned to Victoria. "What do you think?" she asked. "You have seen a lot of his work." Victoria looked at the boards for a long moment. "The designs are good," she said. "Safe, functional, but they are not what he is really capable of. I have seen his other work. I know what he can do when he is not holding back. He can create spaces that change how people feel about community, not just put rooms next to each other and call it a center." Her words stung because she was right. I had been holding back, half afraid to put my full heart into a project that had her name attached to it. After the meeting, people shuffled papers and said polite things. Jennifer was happy I was open to revisions. When it was finally over, I slipped out into the hallway and saw Victoria walking toward the front door. "Can we talk?" I asked. She looked around at the people in the lobby. "Not here," she said. We walked to a side stairwell. It was empty and quiet. She stood one step above me, which put us almost at eye level. "You were right," she said before I could speak. "About what?" I asked. "About me being scared," she said. "About needing to choose instead of hiding. About all of it." She took a shaky breath. "I spent the last month telling myself that what we have is not real," she said. "That I am just going through a crisis and you got caught in the middle." I tried to convince myself it was a phase. I could not. Every time something happens, you are the person I want to tell. I make decisions for the design collective and think, what would Michael say about this? I swallowed hard. "Then why did you disappear?" I asked. "Because I was trying to do the right thing," she said. "I talked to a lawyer. I looked at our finances. I looked at the life I built with Richard and what it would mean to take it apart." She stepped down one step, closer to me. "I asked Richard for a separation last week," she said. My mind went blank for a second. "You what?" I asked. "I told him I have not been happy for years," she said. "That we have been living like roommates. I said I do not want to pretend anymore." "What did he say?" I asked. "He was not surprised," she said. "He has been seeing someone in London for almost 3 years. A woman he met through business. He looked almost relieved when I brought it up first, like I had given him permission to stop pretending too. I did not know whether to laugh or feel sick. So all this time, I said, "You were scared of breaking a marriage that was already broken." "It still hurts," she said, "but yes, in some ways." She stepped down another step, so we were standing on the same one now. The stairwell felt very small. "I am not free yet," she said. "This will take months. Lawyers, papers, talking to Sarah, dividing all the parts of a life I built over 33 years. But I wanted you to know I am not just talking anymore. I am choosing something different. I am choosing myself. And I am choosing us." My chest felt tight, but in a good way. "Victoria," I said, "I do not need you to fix everything overnight. I just needed to know that you are not going back to pretending." Before she could answer, her phone rang. She glanced down, her face drained of color. "It is Sarah," she whispered. She answered. "Yes, I am still at the Coalition building," she said. She listened for a second, her eyes flicking up to mine. Fear flashed across her face. "Okay, I will be right there." She hung up and turned to me. "She is in the parking lot," Victoria said. "She saw us walk into the stairwell together. She knows something is wrong. I have to go." "Do you want me to come with you?" I asked. "No," she said quickly. "Not yet. Please, I will call you." She squeezed my hand once and then hurried down the stairs, leaving me standing in the quiet stairwell with my heart pounding. 5 days passed with no word, no calls, no texts, nothing. Each day felt longer than the last. I poured myself into new designs for the community center, this time not holding back. I put every emotion into the plan. Wide, warm hallways. Open windows. Rooms that felt safe and bright instead of cold and cheap. A central space built for people to gather and see each other. I worked until my hands cramped from drawing. On the sixth night, around 2 in the morning, someone knocked on my apartment door. The knocking was fast and shaking, like the person on the other side was running on pure nerves. I opened it and found Victoria standing there. She wore sweatpants and an old jacket zipped up to her throat. Her hair was pulled back loosely. Her eyes were red and swollen like she had been crying for hours. "Can I stay here tonight?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I do not want to be alone." I did not ask questions. I stepped aside and pulled her in. As soon as the door closed, she broke. Her body shook as she cried against my chest. I held her tighter and felt my own eyes burn. We moved to the couch, and I let her talk in bits and pieces between breaths. "Sarah saw us walk into the stairwell," she said. She waited in the parking lot and confronted me when I came out. She asked if I was having an affair. I could not lie to her. I told her the truth about the separation, about your designs, about my feelings. She screamed at me in the car the whole drive home. I listened and stroked her hair slowly. She said she did not know who I was anymore, Victoria said. She said she did not want to see me. She said I had ruined our family. Her voice cracked. I pulled her closer. "We will figure this out," I said softly. "You are not alone in this." We lay on the couch like that, her head on my chest, my arms around her, the city quiet outside the windows. There were no neat answers. No easy way to make it all okay, only the steady sound of her breathing and the slow rise and fall of both our chests. At some point, we fell asleep. Morning light slipped in around the edges of the blinds. Victoria stirred, blinking up at me like she did not remember where she was for a second. Then it all came back, and her face crumpled. "I should go," she said. "Stay," I said, "just for a little while longer." She rested her head back on my chest. "This is going to get worse before it gets better, isn't it?" she asked. "Probably," I said honestly. She was quiet for a long time before she spoke again. "Are you sure you want this?" she asked. Me, the judgment, the anger, Sarah being so hurt, people at your work talking, my friends turning their backs. "Are you sure you want to walk into all of that with me?" I thought about the long months of hiding, the guilt, the nights alone, the way she looked when she talked about old buildings and new chances, the way my name sounded in her voice. "I am sure," I said. "I would rather fight for something real with you than spend my life pretending to be okay without you." She closed her eyes and let out a long breath. "I spent 33 years being who everyone else needed me to be," she said. "For the first time, I am trying to be who I need to be. I am scared, but I am not going back." So we did not go back. We walked forward into the mess together. People did talk. My firm heard rumors, and some co-workers started making quiet comments about my interesting choices. A few older colleagues stopped inviting me to certain projects. I felt it, all of it, but I kept showing up and doing the work. Victoria faced even worse. Her arts club, where she had been a member for 20 years, quietly suggested that she might be more comfortable somewhere else. Some women she had called friends stopped returning her calls. Charity committees reorganized and suddenly did not need her input anymore. The hardest part, though, was Sarah. For weeks, she would not see her mother at all. One cold afternoon in mid-December, I found Victoria sitting on the bare concrete floor inside the unfinished community center. She was alone, her back against a fresh drywall panel, tears running down her face. I sat next to her. "What happened?" I asked softly. "I went to Sarah's apartment this morning," she said. I stood at her door and asked if we could talk. She would not open it. She just yelled through the door that she did not have a mother anymore. The words hung between us like something heavy and sharp. I wrapped my arm around her shoulders. She leaned into me, shaking. "She will come around," I said, even though I did not know that for sure. "People who really love each other try to find their way back, even if it takes time." "How long?" she whispered. I did not have an answer. In that half-built community center, with dust on the floor and raw wood exposed, we held on to each other. Outside, cars passed. The city kept moving. Inside, all we had were broken pieces, and the stubborn hope that somehow we could build something better out of them. We just did not know yet if love would be enough to hold it all together. Winter came in hard that year. Cold wind pushed through the city streets. The kind of cold that made you want to stay inside and forget about everything. But we had a community center to finish, and no storm or rumor could stop that. The building slowly changed around us. Bare studs turned into walls. Cold concrete turned into smooth floors. We watched it all grow together, one piece at a time. Every choice we made with people in mind. Kids who needed a safe place after school. Parents who needed somewhere quiet to sit and breathe. Older neighbors who just wanted to feel less alone. Working with Victoria every day felt different now. We were not hiding from ourselves anymore. Everyone who mattered already knew or had heard the story. There were no more secret apps or hidden messages. We still kept our private life quiet, but we were not pretending we were just project partners when we looked at each other. Some days were good. We would stand in the main room and imagine it full of people, full of life. Victoria would point out where she wanted warm colors and soft lights, and I would talk about traffic flow and noise levels and access ramps. Some days were brutal. There were emails from people at my firm asking if I was sure this community work was good for my reputation. There were calls from committees telling Victoria they had decided to move in a different direction. And there was the long, sharp silence from Sarah. One afternoon in January, I walked into the community center and found kids from the neighborhood pressed up against the glass doors, watching us work. They stared at the bright paint on one wall and the big windows we had added. "Is this for us?" one boy asked through the door when I opened it to bring in supplies. "Yeah," I said. "This is for you." He nodded, like that answer meant more than I could see, and ran back to tell his friends. Later that day, I found Victoria alone in one of the finished rooms, standing near the window. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked, without turning around. "Regret what?" I asked. "Choosing this," she said. "Choosing me. Choosing all this mess." I stepped behind her and wrapped my arms around her waist, resting my chin on her shoulder. "No," I said. "Some days it hurts. Some days it is hard. But I do not regret you. Not for a second." She leaned back against me and looked out at the gray sky. "I lost a lot," she said. "Friends, status, comfort. Sarah. Sometimes I lie awake and wonder if I traded too much for one last chance at being myself." Quote, "You did not trade for one last chance," I said. "You traded for the rest of your life." She was quiet for a long time, then nodded. March came, and with it, opening day. The community center looked nothing like the empty shell we had first walked into. The lobby was bright and welcoming. The main room had soft seating and long tables and walls covered in color. There were classrooms, art rooms, a small computer lab, and even a quiet corner with shelves of books and big chairs that made you feel safe when you sank into them. People from the neighborhood filled the building that morning. Kids ran down the halls. Parents walked slow, touching the walls like they could not believe this was really theirs. Volunteers handed out snacks. A local band played near the entrance. Jennifer gave a short speech. Then she handed the mic to Victoria. "This center is about more than walls and paint and furniture," Victoria said. "It is about saying that every person in this neighborhood matters. That you deserve beauty and safety and space just as much as anyone else." Quote. Her voice trembled, but she did not break. She talked about community, about second chances, and about building things that reflect the people inside them. When she stepped down, she came to stand beside me. Our shoulders brushed. It was a small touch, but it felt huge. Weeks passed, the building filled with life. Kids came every day after school. Adults used the computer lab to work on resumes and school projects. Seniors played cards at round tables near the windows. It felt like watching a heart start beating in a place that had been asleep for a long time. Victoria's design collective grew too. Other groups heard about the center and reached out. She started working with more neighborhoods, more projects. She hired 2 young designers to help her, both of them people who did not usually get chances at fancy firms. On a Tuesday in April, I was in my office at the center when Victoria appeared at the door. Her face was pale, but there was a strange light in her eyes. "Sarah is here," she said. "She wants to talk to both of us." My stomach dropped. I followed Victoria down the hall to the main room. Sarah stood in the middle of the space, looking around. She wore a simple jacket and jeans. No perfect party dress, no flawless makeup. She looked smaller than I remembered. When she saw us, she folded her arms, then dropped them, not sure what to do with her hands. "This place is beautiful," she said at last. "You both did a really good job." "Thank you," I said carefully. "Can we sit?" Victoria asked. We sat at one of the long tables. For a moment, nobody spoke. "I have been angry for a long time," Sarah said. "At both of you. At my dad. At pretty much the whole world." She looked right at her mother. I felt like everything I knew about my family was a lie. Like every memory had a crack down the middle I just never saw. Victoria's hand shook on the table. "I understand," she said. "And I am so sorry for the way you had to find out, and for the pain I caused you." "I know you are sorry," Sarah said. "I also know you are not going back." "No," Victoria said softly, "I am not." "Good," Sarah said. Victoria blinked. "Good?" she repeated. Sarah looked around at the busy center. Kids laughed in the next room. Someone pushed a cart down the hall. "I have been watching," she said. "Everyone is talking about this place. About your work. About how different you are now. You look more alive than I have ever seen you." She looked at me for a second, then back at her mother. "I am still hurt," she said. "And it is going to take me a long time to fully understand all of this. But I am starting to realize something. You did not blow up a perfect life. You blew up a perfect picture. That is different." Tears filled Victoria's eyes. "I thought I lost you," she whispered. "I thought I lost you too," Sarah said. "But I do not want that. I want to figure out how to know you again. The real you, not just the version who planned parties and smiled for photos." She turned to me. "And you," she said. "I was so mad at you. I hated you for a while." "I know," I said quietly. "You had every right to." "I do not know if I am ready to be your friend," she said. "But I see the way you look at my mom. I see the way she looks at you. And I cannot pretend it is not real. So for now, I am just going to try to be someone who does not stand in the way of her mother being happy." It was not a perfect fix. It was not instant forgiveness. But it was a door opening, even just a little. For us, that was huge. 6 months later, Victoria's divorce was final. The lawyers finished their work. Papers were signed. The life she had lived for 33 years became a set of folders in someone's cabinet. We moved into a small townhouse on the west side. It was not big or fancy, but it was ours. We filled it with books, samples, sketches, plants, and mismatched chairs we both loved. The walls slowly filled with photos and prints from old buildings and new projects. Sarah started coming over for dinner twice a month. At first, she stayed close to the surface in conversation. Over time, she relaxed. She asked questions about my work. She teased her mom. She helped chop vegetables in our small kitchen. Emma came to visit and met Victoria in person. The two of them stayed up late at our dining table, talking like they had known each other for years. On the 1-year anniversary of the night in the Rose Garden, I asked Victoria to meet me at the community center after hours. The building was quiet. The main room was empty, but the walls were covered with art made by the kids. Bright colors, big shapes, messy drawings that told more truth than half the speeches I had heard in my life. Victoria walked in wearing jeans and a soft sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. "What is all this?" she asked. I had set up a small string of lights in the main room. On one wall, I had pinned up photos from the last year. The engagement party, our first coffee, the half-built center, opening day. A shot of her standing in front of a group, speaking with her hands in motion. A photo of us with paint on our clothes, laughing at something out of frame. "It has been a year since that night in the garden," I said. "The night you said you did not know who you were anymore." She looked around the room, taking everything in. Her eyes were already wet. "You asked me once what choosing different would look like," I said. "I think this is it." I took a deep breath, then dropped down on one knee. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Victoria," I said, my voice shaking, "I love you. I love the woman you were, the woman you are now, and the woman you are still figuring out how to be. We built something real together out of the broken pieces of our lives. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down her face as she nodded. "Yes," she said, 1,000 times yes." I slid the ring onto her finger. It was simple and classic, like her. She pulled me up and kissed me. In that empty community center that we had filled with hope and color, we promised each other a future. We got married 4 months later. The ceremony was small and warm, held in the main room of the center. The kids' art stayed on the walls. We did not cover it with flowers or fabric. It felt right to keep their work there, like they were witnesses too. Emma stood beside me as my best woman. Sarah sat in the front row, hands clasped, tears on her cheeks. When Victoria walked toward me wearing a soft cream dress and a calm, brave smile, Sarah stood up without thinking. She met her halfway and hugged her mother tight before letting her go. When we said our vows, there were no big promises about perfection. We promised honesty. We promised to keep choosing each other even when it was hard. We promised to keep building spaces, for ourselves and for others, where people could finally feel seen. Standing there, holding Victoria's hands, I realized something. We had given up a lot. Reputation. Safety. A neat story people could approve of without thinking. In return, we got something very simple and very rare. A real life. One built on truth instead of performance. On love instead of image. On the belief that it is never too late to wake up and change the shape of your days. Sometimes when the house is quiet and Victoria has fallen asleep with a book open on her chest, I think back to that first night in the rose garden. A lonely woman at a perfect party. A tired man hiding near the flowers. One soft sentence spoken under her breath. I wish someone cared about me like that. If I close my eyes, I can still feel her hand on my arm, the way she said my name for the first time in a different way. She wanted someone to care about her as just Victoria. I think, in the end, that is exactly what we both found.